Wicket. Again, characters, Ewoks in general, who were probably the first characters that were disliked, but I never disliked Ewoks. Again, it's a galaxy far, far away. There's going to be some cutesy characters. There's going to be some ugly characters. It's just another example of George Lucas flexing his creative mind, and I'm good with that when it comes to character design. I guess that's one of the reasons why I don't dislike Watto or totally hate Jar Jar. They're just designs. They're aliens. They look weird, so it's fine by me. But as for Wicket himself, again, we're just focusing on what's represented in the image, so just Wicket W. Warwick / Warwick Davis, who is always a darling. He's played so many characters in Star Wars, and he was also Leprechaun, which is kind of great. But, yeah, Wicket's fantastic. He's a really fun little character. Would he have impacted me? So, I drop him in C tier. He does what he needs to do. Alright, I'll put him higher than Watto. Not as high as Grief. Yeah, okay. Yoda. Now, my question is, do we have like an older Yoda here? I mean that's the thing. I think of all 9 Skywalker films, Yoda is the most consistent. I never feel like he's written poorly. I never feel like he's visually ajar. Like, I even like the puppet Yoda in Phantom, I'll be real with you. Like, yeah, maybe he like aged too rapidly compared to the CGI counterpart in Attack of the Clones, but I don't know, I never hated the puppet. I always found it very charming, kind of just going back to the practical effects that they used in the original. Like, as a kid, I just thought it was refreshing. It was not like a CGI dump. It was very Mos Eisley Cantina. So I always like a physical, tangible alien over one that's in CGI, which was, like Watto and Jar Jar. But I mean, visuals, that's like that's not the main thing when talking about Yoda. I mean, size matters not, obviously. I mean, he's a receptacle of good wisdom in the Star Wars universe, obviously. He's the embodiment of the light side. Although, as you see in the show, is not without his faults. He was also instrumental in nearly sentencing, where did she go, Ahsoka Tano to death. So he's not a perfect character. So that being said, as awesome as Yoda always is, there is something missed. Like, I know that in the original Clone Wars finale, before they renewed a 7th season, in that finale, he kind of faced off against this dark side apparition of himself, which kind of represented all the horrible energies that he's been containing or reflecting over his 900 years of life. And that was only, like, a taste of what I really want from Yoda. Just what he's faced, the hardship, the death, the tragedy. Yeah, like, even when Order 66 happens, he's not very, he reacts to it. He's like, he feels a great deal of grief, but he recovers pretty quick, and that's probably on behalf of all the training he's had. But again, it's not really backed up by story that we've seen for him beforehand, you know what I mean? But anyways, like, that's literally my only issue with the character, just that he is so light side that at this point we're like, come on, what really happened a long time ago in this galaxy, right? Like, what made him this good? That's a movie or a show that I would love to see, just like a Yoda animated show, limited series. Like, give him a Tales of the Jedi treatment. I think that is a show with a lot of potential to shed light into characters that we needed just a few more answers on, like Dooku, for example. So, but Yoda's still Yoda. He's still a huge deal. Yeah, throw him up an A, I'd say. So let's get him up there. Above Stormtroopers, ooh, and we have his arch nemesis, right? Yeah, I'd say above Cad Bane, above Anakin. How about potentially his son, Grogu? He could be his son. I'll get back to that. Luke, all right, higher than Luke. Not as high as Boba Fett. Alright, I think that's good. So anyways, the reason why I said Grogu could indeed be Yoda's child is there is actually some lore behind Ki-Adi-Mundi, who's right here in C tier. So of course the Jedi forbid attachment, which is one of the Order's greatest flaws, but they make an exception when it comes to progressing a certain species that's like on the verge of extinction. So as for Kiarimundi, I forget a species name, but they are very endangered. But they allowed Mundi to fornicate for the sake of simply expanding his species, but he was never emotionally attached to any of his partners, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure if he had one partner or multiple. I really don't know how far that goes, but as for Yoda, I could see him maybe having an affair with Yaddle, who wouldn't be here. Obviously, we get a lot more light on her in Tales of the Jedi, which is fantastic. But since their species is so sparse, one of the rare species in the entire galaxy, I could see them conceiving Grogu as a means of their species having a second shot. So I don't think that's too far-fetched. I feel like that's a place where he'd be willing to bend the rules. Again, if that were canon, that would make him a lot more fascinating. But then again, the last thing I'll say about him is one of the things that makes Yoda so great is because we don't know everything about him. That's what makes him so mysterious and interesting to learn about. Okay, next up we have young Boba Fett, I think more specifically as he appears in the Clone Wars show, because obviously we got the live-action version and Attack of the Clones, who was certainly inferior, but I consider those characters being one and the same. I mean, it's the same time period and all that. I mean, literally same haircut at that point. But yeah, we do get a few arcs from him in the Clone Wars show, which are really interesting to see. Like we already talked about, Aura Singh, the first time we see him appear in animated format is alongside Aura, and she kind of acts as a foil to him. Like she's a very diehard, no compromise bounty hunter, whereas he's a little bit more morally ambiguous. He wants to avenge his father by killing Mace Windu, but at the same time, he doesn't want to murder young kids, being, well, clones of his own father, and in that sense, being his own brothers, which of course he's very reluctant to ever admit, and I don't think he ever really does. But yeah, he does become a very interesting, multifaceted character as the show progresses. Like, I think this time with Aura Singh and Bosk is when he's the most interesting. After that, he's kind of just there, like, alright, here's Boba again, like doing this train arc with Asajj when she becomes a bounty hunter, but it's kind of just to see him again, pretty much, and then she betrays him for some reason. I can't quite remember exactly why, but yeah, I like the character enough. Obviously, when he ages up, he's a lot more interesting, but as a young kid, it's still kind of cool to see him pursue revenge, then eventually kind of turn face. We never really see him do that, but I guess he starts focusing more on his career and becoming his father as opposed to avenging his father, which it is kind of progress in a way. So yeah, I'd say because, you know what, let's do another package deal. Where did Aura Singh go? I don't recall. So we got Pong Krell. Did I put her in C tier? I feel like I would have put her in B. Oh, she's in B. Yeah, I think I appreciate them both for the exact same story arc, but Aura Singh is what makes that story arc so interesting to me, and again, she's hot as hell, so yeah, I'd put them right beside each other because they both are kind of there to tell the exact same story together, and I think they both serve their purpose just fine. Young Han, I actually liked his portrayal. I think he was well done. We kind of already said everything that there was to say about this character. Again, it's a story about largely not trusting everyone, but at the same time, you can still pick and choose your friends. So ultimately, everything winds up with him just being with Chewie and how we know him to be. So, I mean, that's the issue with telling a prequel or a precursor. We know how these characters are going to wind up, but that being said, it's so interesting to see him have like an initial love interest, even though she wasn't totally fleshed out. I hope they would in the Solo too, but I have high doubts it'll never happen, just because of, I wouldn't even say low reception, just no reception, just simply because people didn't even see it. But he was fine. Like, I wouldn't say that he himself impacted me a ton, but he was good. He was fine. Great movie. I liked it a lot, but I wouldn't put him as high as most of the C-tier characters. Again, kind of like what we did with Aura and young Boba. I would say he's a package deal with Beckett, but I put him below Beckett just because I feel like Beckett was more interesting because he was new, he was self-contained, everything that needed to be said about him was in that one movie. As for Han, we could only like him because we knew of the movies that came before that featured Harrison Ford. So, that's kind of a weakness. Not on the actor, it's not his fault at all. It's just, the essence of Han Solo, he's a legacy character, Like, so we're gonna have, we're gonna be judging this character automatically based on every time we've seen him in the past. Whereas Tobias Beckett, he just exists in that one movie, and he does a fantastic job. Young Han. You know what? Let's straight away put him right below Han Solo, Young Han, I'd say, for the exact same reasons. Like, you already know his deal. Crispin Glover does a pretty damn good... Wait, Crispin Glover? No, Donald Glover. I always get my Glovers confused. My apologies. He does a fine job portraying Lando Calrissian, of course, Billy D. Williams. I thought he did a pretty good job. Both of them did a good job portraying younger versions of the characters that we grew up knowing. So, knowing, inventing new words, especially at this hour in the night. But yeah, all right, that's fine. What's your name again? It's been a long time. Zero the Hutt. That's right. So he appeared in the Clone Wars movie. That was his debut. Then he appeared here and there in the Clone Wars show, I think just to die, pretty much. But I never liked this character. Just too over the top. Jabba's obviously better in every single aspect. He's just really annoying. Do I hate him as much as Bantha Poodoo? Not quite. Like, I don't really see much potential in him either. Yeah. I let me think. So, people who are in F tier, I just really don't care. Do I hate watching Zero? He's irritable. Like, B1 battle droids are fine. I can watch them. That's okay. Zero, alright, we'll give him high Bantha Poodoo. How about that? None of these characters annoy me up here, so that's okay. Zori Bliss, she didn't really do much. Obviously, Babu is the stronger of the two, but I couldn't even call them a package deal, just because at least Babu was instrumental and he was hilarious. As for Zori, like, she was kind of having a relationship with Poe, and now that I say that, I'm finally remembering the name of this character, Xana, right? And she was kind of the counterpart to Finn in that film. So, I don't know, it was like everyone was in a rush to get paired up with somebody, and as for Zori, she was trying to be paired with Poe, which, okay, sure. Like, it was sweet moments, like, Kerry Russell, I thought she did a good acting job in that one sincere moment she had, but other than that, she was kind of just floating around. But I love her design. The Black Series figure is actually great. I'm sure you could get that on sale, no problem. The photo reel is also really good. But she doesn't really do anything. But I like her design fine. But you know what? Shit, I'll put her higher than Poe. Alright. Just because I think she's cooler. I want to learn more about Zori than I want to learn about Poe. Simply. Then we have ISB Agent Terex. He's actually the character I remember most from Rebels. I like his arc, which was very well spread out across the show, from being a diehard Imperial and then becoming a very earnest and humble rebel. An arc much better handled than a certain Bad Batch character who I used to love, and then they shortchanged him by having him turn face too soon. That was Crosshair. I'm sure he'll be here on this list. Do we have Bad Batch on this list at all? We do. Alright, they come around later. I'm gonna have some things to say about Bad Batch, but anyways, as for Terex, I think we'll put him right on top of... Yeah, I'd say above Garazeb, but not as high as Dewanawonka. Okay. Aw, BD1. Alright, so it looks like things are getting a little bit more messy down here. It's no longer being alphabetical. I guess we passed that point already with Terex, and maybe some others. But BD1... Alright, so now we're talking about Fallen Order, and I don't know why Bo-Katan's here, just breaking it up. But BD1's a really cute character. He was your little puppy on Cal Kestis's journey. That game, we'll talk more about the game itself when we're actually talking about Cal, but BD1 was a joy. I really loved him, and he was kind of like, yeah, he had these moments of just outright fan service where like he's hacking into some of the droids and he's straight up humming the Rebels fleet theme, which I can't knock that. It's too damn cute. And you're always worried about his safety because he's so small and he's so skittish. Yeah, he's just really endearing. I liked him a lot. And he's your buddy on the whole journey, which is great. So, yeah, I'll put him in B tier. I think I'm okay with that. I'd say higher than Gonk. Alright, I'd say higher than Gonk. So it looks like we got kind of like a droid pack over here. Yeah, Gonk's more for the gags, BD1 is for the gags and the sincerity, and IG-11's more for the sincerity. So I guess we kind of got like a little pattern going on there. Bo-Katan Kryze. Now, do we have the live-action variant down here? I mean, she doesn't really change a whole ton in between her two depictions, but yeah, she's a great character, sister of Sabine, ally of Mando, and she was a character, honestly, I could not care about at all until Mando Season 3. That's when she really rose to the occasion. Then again, I think it was a little bit short-lived. I feel like they could have done a little bit more, but still, like, that's why a lot of people argue the Mandalorian show is no longer about Din, it's about her. And I like how, like, him having the Darksaber, it was never really his. He never wanted anything to do with it. It just happened to be in his possession by way of tradition. He didn't want anything to do with it, so that's why he had no issue with giving it to Bo-Katan as soon as he was able to, because he knew that she was the hero of the Mando culture. As for him, he just wanted to save his son. That's really what his story amounted to at the end of the day. So, Bo-Katan, she was a pretty well-done character. Obviously, there's a lot more going on with her in the Clone Wars 2, with Pre Vizsla, who comes on a little bit later here in the list. But, yeah, I wouldn't say I love the character as much as I do certain others, but I'd say she's solid B tier. I'd say below Mace, below Rey perhaps, higher than Rio, higher than, I put Snoke higher, but I wouldn't put Qui-Gon higher. Okay, fine. Okay, now let's talk about Jedi Fallen Order a little bit with Cal Kestis. There's something about this game, it's like this, it's this real comfort zone. I don't know, it's just a very cozy little game. Not little, it's huge, but it's a mood. That's the way I describe this game. It really just drops me into a certain point in my life, in the middle of college. I remember playing this game like I was on Zepho, and it was like around the holiday season. There was snow outside, and everything was nice and chilly, which I really like. So, yeah, it was just really sweet. And the game was great. It was a lot of fun, a lot of really great characters. I'll be real. It took me a little while to warm up to Cal, because his journey is very similar to Luke in certain ways, but at the same time, he had his own merits. I thought he had a really cool story. Again, very similar to Caleb Doom in some ways, but I guess the best way to think of Cal is like he's a good summation of all the characters we've seen come before him, like the Jedi Padawans or younglings who were kind of strewn about after Revenge of the Sith, but like you actually see when that happened for him, and then you pretty much walk through every little step, and then you see a variety of arcs with him, like learning to forgive himself. I think that was the greatest thing, is he blamed himself for seeing Jaro Tapal die, be murdered right before his eyes, and there was nothing he could do about it. Like, that was really his biggest arc. But then, of course, he met a whole new team, who we'll be talking about later on. But, yeah, like, and then the sequel came out, which I didn't want to buy. I know the story of it, but I just didn't feel like playing the game, just because I feel like it could, like, as good as it probably is, it just would not hit a certain nerve that Fallen Order did. So I passed on this second game, but as I understand Cal, He's a really solid character, very well rounded. I'll give him B tier. Above Lando, above Phasma, I'd say above Aura, which says a lot. Above the droids, above Greedo, perhaps. Yeah, Cal's really cool. You know, he has a similar story to Ahsoka, I'd say. But I think I might prefer Cal more. But Jin's great. So, okay, I'll put him above Ahsoka. I mean, Ahsoka's definitely a better character, but I just connected Cal with Cal more. I think simply on the fact that he was part of a video game. You're journeying with him literally every step of the way. There's no gaps. So, yeah, I'd say personally, like, I was there when the game came out. As for Ahsoka, I couldn't really appreciate her until Season 7 for me, personally, because I had to catch up on the show in college, so that's pretty much where it is for me. Had things been different, she might actually be a chosen one, who knows, but anyways. Seer Junda, my first impressions of her are, her eyes are very big, but, yeah, kind of a cool character, a good parallel to Cal, a great mentor, and said she is a Jedi Master who lost her Padawan, who we will be talking about later. Seer's solid. I think there was never a wasted moment with her. She was handled just fine. Not as connected with her as I am with other characters, so I'm going to give her a C, but it's not for lack of development or anything. I think she was very well put together. Alright, we'll put her higher than Watto. Put her higher than... I'd say higher than... Alright, we'll put her higher than Watto, but Ewoks are cool. Okay. Then we have... I'm getting all these names confused, because a lot of the names in Disney-era Star Wars are very similar, but... Grease? Was it Grease? Damn it. Alright. Time to go to Google. I thought this would happen eventually. Was it Grease? What's Grease's name? Grease-dritis. Why am I not getting a picture? Images. Yep. Alright, Grease. I was getting, like, confused with Baze and a whole bunch of other names, but yeah, Grease. Yeah, he was a lot more fun than Seer. Actually, I think I liked his character arc a little bit more. He was kind of just there on contract. He was just supposed to be a pilot that Seer hired to see out Cal's mission. And by the end of it, he could have just left. Like, that could have been it. But he decided, you know what, let me stay on. You guys have become my family over time. And also, he's a really funny character, too. He injects a lot of comedic relief when the plot needs it. It's never too much. Yeah, he's just a scruffy, fun little dude. I like him a lot. So, yeah, I definitely prefer him more than Seer. I'd say more than Wicket as an individual. More than Grief, perhaps. Where did he go? Oops. Yeah. More than Thrawn, more than Hux. And we have two characters with multiple limbs, interestingly enough. But, yeah, definitely more than Rio. More than... Yeah, I'd say... Alright, we'll leave him behind Snoke. Okay, cool. Iden version. I do not like Iden at all. If you don't know who she is, no one on the face of the planet would blame you. So, she stars in one of the most controversial Star Wars games ever made, which was Star Wars Battlefront 2, the EA version from 2016. So that game was extremely controversial. I think EA was sued over it because of the whole loot crate thing that happened. But strip away all the financial, political, whatever. Iden was supposed to be part of the story mode of that game, which was inferior in every way compared to the 501st Journal that was done in the original 2005 Battlefront 2. And this is another case of an Imperial character who went good too fast. Like, 3 missions in, immediately, she falls right to the Rebel side. And after that, I just did not care. I cared so little, I didn't even hate the character anymore. I just didn't have any opinions on her. She's just there. Like, I just found myself totally ignoring her and displacing her. So, you know what? I'm gonna drop her an F. Just because her story arc has been done before and definitely better, And I just didn't think she was interesting at all in herself as a human being. So, I don't like her potential as much as Pride. New Gunray was kind of just there, though. At least they were doing something with Aiden, so alright. I guess I'll put her there, fine. Remember I said that there was a superior Night Sister to win them all? That is Merrin from Fallen Order, who is also cute as hell. Not gonna say that about every single female character, but I pick and choose, but she's up there. I want my Black Series figure of Merrin. I think everyone does. Again, one of the best things about her is that she has a direct parallel with Cal Kestis and the other Jedi who are left in the aftermath of the Jedi Purge. Of course, she was a Night Sister, and I think, as far as at least she knows, the last living after Grievous's massacre on Dathomir. And then, of course, that directly relates her to Cal. And I don't know, maybe I connected with her more than I did with Cal, even though he was the main character we were playing as. And again, I didn't play the second game, but you saw them fighting directly alongside each other, which was really cool. And they finally shared a kiss, damn it, which I think everyone was rooting for. So that was great. I love Merrin a lot. I love her dialogue. I love her arc. Like, you could see she was a total recluse on Dathomir, just, like, immediately off-put by any outsiders, regardless of who they are, immediately sending zombies after them, her undead sisters. But then Cal had to confront her and say, we're not your enemy. Like, I'm a Jedi, but we're keepers of peace. We're not here to cut people down. That was all a misconception. Like, just because Grievous had lightsabers doesn't necessarily mean we're all Grievous, you know? And Grievous wasn't even a Jedi, but yeah, Merrin, I feel like she was more concrete than Kestis. So I'm actually going to put her, again, package deal with Cal, because I feel like if you remove one of them from the equation, neither are nearly as significant. But yeah, I'd put her higher than Cal, but just below Jin. I think that works perfectly. Prey Vizsla. I think he is the owner of the Darksaber. I love Prey. I love the Vizsla family line. I mean, we've gotten several Vizslas over time. Their very first was Shay Vizsla, who will not show up here, but she was in the Old Republic multiplayer game. And then obviously down the line, while Clone Wars was also part of the expanded universe before there was Legends and canon, Prey Vizsla was the next one, and then that's the first time we saw the Darksaber. And Rebels revealed, before Prey Vizsla, the creator of the Darksaber was Tare Vizsla, and then Sabine Wren got hold of it, then the Mandalorian Din Djarin got it, and then before him, Gideon somehow got it, and now Bo-Katan currently has it, and then it was destroyed. But he was the first character we saw who had it. But I freaking loved Prey Vizsla so much. I loved how he was a totally static, uncompromising, unwavering Mandalorian. Like, he is the exact opposite of Satine. He is a diehard, conservative, barbaric Mandalorian, and I loved him so much. He died way too soon. He died for the right reasons. Of course, he was killed by Maul, so Maul could take over Mandalore and have his whole deal. But Prey Vizsla, I want more of him in some way. I mean, I want him to come back from the dead. We've had way too much of that in Star Wars, but just more of his backstory would be great. I just want more Prey, and I have his figure on pre-order. I'm really looking forward to that. So, obviously, I prefer him more than Satine, and by proxy, more than Mommy Skywalker, right? So, I'd say higher than Barriss. Actually, higher than Bo-Katan, who, of course, was directly alongside him for a time. Higher than Rey, Mace. I might say higher than Embo, Plo Koon, Quill, Dooku. Yeah, you know what? He's going to be one of those special cases of, like, a high C tier. Like, I don't know, I like those really hard-headed, militaristic sort of characters that can hold their own as Jedi despite having no Force powers. I mean, obviously he'd stand more chance against Jango, and he's proven so. Like, at least Prey lasted a while against Maul, but because he had the Darksaber, but obviously we know how Django ended up, right? But yeah, I'd say I'd put him up here with Django for the exact same reasons. I'd say Prey is ultimately a better character than Django, but Django just resonates with me more. But yeah, okay, that's it for me there. One of... Alright, I see them both here, so we're just going to put them both in the same bucket. I don't even remember their names. I really did not like these characters. They really took away from Season 7. Again, the reason why I say I love the last 4 episodes of Season 7 is because there were other episodes that were not so great. And that was because of these two sisters who were kind of running around with Ahsoka for kind of no reason. Like, they kind of just getting imprisoned by the Pikes, and they escaped, and they went to prison again, and then they come back in the Bad Batch show for some reason. I really just don't care about them. Like, and that's literally all I have to say. And just the fact that I don't even remember their names kind of says a lot. So, so this clone over here, you know what, alright, I gotta do another Google search, because I keep racking this clone in my head. I think he's 5, so, let's see. Star Wars, 5s. Alright, that is 5s. Okay, so you know what, we're gonna come back to him. But as for these two sisters, I definitely like them less than Xana, I don't even know. But I really don't like them much at all. I guess the older sister was more annoying. The younger one at least had more kinship with Ahsoka, so she gets a little bit more. Alright, 5. So let's reassess him completely, because he had a whole other thing. He was the one who discovered the chip and informed Rex of the chip. Somehow. I don't really get how that kind of connected, because so much time passed in the show before that happened in Season 7, but yeah, he definitely deserves to be higher. Again, a character I don't care about as much, but he's one of the better clones, absolutely. Definitely, he was like that failed whistleblower. He could not scrape out, unfortunately, and he had one of the most tragic clone deaths, easily. I'd say he's like on par with T-Rex. I'd say they both have a great story, but I'd say 5's is superior. But Dewanawonga's powerful. Then we have, again, a lot of these names just feel similar to me. But not Bodhi Rook. Saw Gerrera, okay. He's awesome. Of course, he actually first appeared in the Clone Wars show, which I didn't even connect. But obviously, we got Forrest Whitaker's portrayal in Rogue One. And for me, that is Saw Gerrera. And I love any character that grays the lines between light side and dark side. Like, he's as dark side as you can get for a rebel. He is a radical. He's an outright terrorist. But for good reason. Like, you see his sister murdered before his eyes by the CIS in the Clone Wars show. And you just see all these little events that happen for him up to the destruction of Jeddah in Rogue One, where you're like, yeah, we see why he's fallen apart and why he's borderline cyborg. And he's kind of a precursor, well, not really a precursor, he came to this point after Vader, I guess, but he's very similar to Vader in that he's also a cyborg because he's so dead set on his motives. He has such tunnel vision, and he becomes very self-destructive as a result of that. So, like, as he said, there's not much of me left. And Vader does say that to some capacity. So, yeah, he has a really interesting Vader connection that obviously neither of those two characters acknowledge with each other. They have little to do with each other, although I guess Saw did know Anakin. But, yeah, I think just poetically, he's solid, very well acted, in animated and in live action. But yeah, like, when combining everything we know about him, I'd say I kind of care about him for the same reasons why I care about Maul. But I definitely like Saw Gerrera more than Maul, so let's squeeze him up. But I love K2 too much, so yeah, I'll put him there. Grand Inquisitor, oh man. It's a character I want to love, but I have absolutely no reason to love him. So he was a Jedi Consular, Guardian of the Temple, big deal. Then he fell to the dark, became the first Inquisitor, as far as we know. then he died in Rebels without really an arc. He was just kind of just a temporary threat. Then we saw a precursor for him in the Kenobi show, and then he's killed by Reva. Then he comes back, and he kind of just walks away. So, like, I really want to love the Inquisitors. I really, really do. But there's only 2 of them worth talking about, and the Grand Inquisitor is not one of them, sadly. So, I'd hate to say it, but I gotta give him an F tier. And also, his Black Series figure was like the first review we did where I had varied opinions on it. So, I don't know. Like, I guess he's got a little bit of soft spot for me, but not enough to get him out of F tier. Definitely more than the Martez sisters. Is that what they're called? Yeah, I'd say so. More than this person, Janna. At least I felt like Dryden Voss was integral in some way. So, I'll put Grand Inquisitor below him. Now, speaking of Inquisitors, there were only 2 that were done well. And the best one of them all, easily, Trilla. I love Trilla a lot. And I love how as soon as she turned to the light, she was slaughtered straight away. Like, I thought that was a really good change on that formula. Like, she didn't just die, give out her life to save all the people she cared about. Like, while she was experiencing the shock of how she was doing everything wrong, she was killed. Like, her last words were, "Avenge us." And that's still a very dark side thing to say. That's not totally Jedi. She never fully redeems. She is, like, right on that edge, and then she's killed. And I thought that was a really brave choice on Jedi Fallen Order's part. That was a really great part of that story. Not as strong of a character as Cal or Merrin, but I'd say, like, her story is just as effective. Like, it's trying to do the same thing. So, alright, we'll have, like, a triple deal over here. Yeah, I just prefer Fallen Order more than Clone Wars. I mean, again, the game came out when I was playing it, so it just lines up a little bit better for me. But, yeah, Trill's great. And she's also pretty cute, but not as cute as Merrin. A few people are. But anyways, now we have, it's our trap! You don't dislike Akbar. No one dislikes Akbar. I'm pretty sure it's the 11th commandment, thou shalt not dislike Akbar. Akbar is great. It sucks that he died the way that he did in Last Jedi. Enough of that. But, yeah, I guess I like him for the same reasons I like Pancake Face. He's definitely a lot more interesting in Legends, but in the movie, he's a lot of fun. I kind of just ignore Last Jedi. I really do largely view sequel trilogy as mostly fan fiction. We're going to put him above Pancake Face, certainly. I'd say even above Han. Yeah, alright, old Han. Yeah, sequel trilogy for me, it's fan fiction, just because there was no care put into the story, so why should I care to headcanon it? So, really, just take what I like, take what I don't like. So one of the things I don't like is the way Akbar died, so I ignore that. But the way we see him in Return of the Jedi, a lot of fun. I liked him a lot. This is a character who no one really ever bat an eye to, but over time, like, this actor keeps coming back, and he keeps getting a little bit better. Bail Organa. We saw him, of course, debut, I think, in Revenge of the Sith. He might have been in Attack of the Clones as well. Then we saw him return in Rogue One, which is really cool. Then, of course, in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I think maybe in Andor as well. I don't quite recall. I don't love this character, but I really do respect the fact that he keeps coming back and we keep learning more about him. It's like just a slow trickle of information, but it's a character who doesn't really need an arc, but he just, like, represents a good side of Star Wars politics, like just a good, earnest man who just wants to be a good father, who is working in the better interest of the galaxy. Like, he's not really attached to the Jedi, like, he knows that most of them are on the good side of things, but ultimately, if the Jedi fell out of favor, then he would, you know, I feel like he would call the shots to say that, you know, we need to find somebody who works better in the interests of the people. So, like, I think he's probably one of the only sincerely great politicians in the Star Wars galaxy where there's nothing wrong with him. So, he's concrete, he's solid. I'd say I don't care about him as much as a lot of the characters we have in C tier, but that's to no fault of his own. Like, Tobias Beckett, I definitely think is a better character. Shmi, Satine, I'd say better than BB-8 by a hair. Yeah, like from Bale to Val, all these characters serve their purpose fine, but I just feel like I don't love them as much as characters that are up here, or enjoy them as much. So yeah, alright, that's fair for me. You could say the same with Anne Peru. She was one of the very first human characters we met. Obviously, she died very quickly in New Hope, the movie that started it all. Well, rather, Star Wars, not New Hope, right? That's what it was called initially. And then she returned, performed by acted out by a younger actress who I don't think we see here, so we're just going to assume the legacy of the character in this one image. But yeah, she came back in the prequels, and then in Obi-Wan Kenobi, where you learn that she and Owen, you know what, here, let's just have them as a package deal, because they pretty much are part of the same story. They are both actually kick-ass, and who would have known it? So, like, we see them hold their own against Reva, one of the Inquisitors in Obi-Wan Kenobi, and that suggests to us that perhaps they didn't go down without a fight in New Hope, which is kind of cool. So, yeah, and obviously they're the parental figures of Luke Skywalker. They're family adjacent to Anakin, I guess. So, yeah, again, they do their part just fine. I'd say I'd put them in equal regard as... Alright, maybe a hair over Bale, because for Bale it's more a continuation. But for these two, it's more a surprise as to how awesome they actually are in the Kenobi show. But I'd put Owen above just because, simply on the fact that we have him with the Sandcrawler and the Jawas, and gets some more fun lines from him. Bill Baru is a sweetheart. She's a really sweet character as well. But yeah, they're both great characters. They're just fine. Now we have Cobb Vanth. I've been waiting to use that voice. And... oh, so excited. Just today, the Target exclusive Cad Bane and Cobb Vanth 2-pack has shipped, and I'm really excited. We're definitely reviewing those too. It's more for one of them than the other, but regardless, Cobb Vanth, he's still a very fun character. I feel like they're failing to do enough with him, but I love every line that he has. I love his portrayal. This is one of those actors who I know has been around, but I never knew about him until Star Wars, so I apologize for that, but I really love him when he does show up. I just wish that he had more focus on him. Like, what? He was really only in 2 episodes, then he had an epilogue in Book of Boba Fett, but yeah, he just needs more. I feel like they could still certainly bring him back in the Disney Plus canon, if you'd call it that. So I wouldn't D-tier him, because I think his story is still continuing, but I will put him in C tier. I'd say, since he's not fully realized yet, I'll put him between Owen and Satine. I think that works for me, because Owen and Satine, we kind of already know their deal, but Cobb Vanth, he's still kind of working his way up for us to care a little bit more. Oh man, alright, things are starting to get really exciting, because, again, things are very scattered around here, but we're moving into Old Republic territory, and Old Republic is my favorite era, my favorite time span in Star Wars. I could really go into this, but yeah, I guess I just love the way it looks. I love how there's so many Jedi and so many Sith. There's a lot of crazy galactic events that happen. It has some of the most over-the-top and insane characters in Star Wars lore, just in terms of their story and everything. So, it's just a great time. So, man, like, should I stop here and resume? You know what? Yeah, I'm going to call it a night, so this is going to be my second night of recording this. I don't know, again, how I'm going to divide all these clips, so this might be the end for you, but for now, it's going to be the end for me. So, I don't know. We'll see, at least for you, in the next few seconds, whether or not it's the end of the clip. So, here we go. Alright, here we go. This is day 3, at least for me. It's probably part 4 for you, but you would have figured that out by now. We've come a long way, and I intend to finish this giant list tonight. but that might be a little bit difficult because I have some of my personal favorites down here. And then again, on the other side of the coin, we have some characters who are very brand new, and I don't remember a whole ton about them because I haven't learned a whole lot about them yet. So it's going to be an interesting mix. And speaking of mix, that is largely because we have some Legends characters just kind of thrown in here, which is good by me because, as I've mentioned before in my Malik and Bastila action figure review, the Old Republic era is my favorite timeline within Star Wars. There's so many awesome characters, really good ideas, just beautiful, lush planets. It's just such an awesome spot within the lore. I love it so much. So basically, the history of the Old Republic era is it started out with the Knights of the Old Republic video game from the early 2000s, which I was not old enough to play it. I never owned a console. That's kind of an important thing to mention. I actually didn't know about KOTOR until I wanted to play a Star Wars game on my dad's iPad as a kid. And wouldn't you know it, KOTOR had a port, so I actually played the whole game there, knew nothing about it, I just thought it was a modern game at the time. I played it probably early 2010s, but I went in totally dry, and I came out a new man. I loved the game, one of the best Star Wars stories ever told. I said that in my last action figure review, and I stand by that. It is such an astounding masterpiece of storytelling. It's really good. And really the only thing I don't like about the game is the gameplay. I don't like the turn-based combat. Every time I went back in to replay it, I always found myself going back into the settings to make things as quick and spontaneous as possible. That's why I'm really hoping that remake actually happens, and let alone is made for PC. I had hoped that it's a little bit more action oriented. Then again, it might shut some people off because some people really love the turn-based combat, and that's totally fine. But anyways, KOTOR 1 was great. As for KOTOR 2, that was really rushed out the door a year after the first installment's release, and it showed. I tried playing it 3 different times in my life, and I've never finished it. It didn't matter what mods I installed to make it a more rounded experience. I just never finished it, and it wasn't because I hated the game or anything. It was just I wasn't very invested in the characters, because the characters in the first game were so good and the story was so excellent. The KOTOR 2, it just left me a little high and dry. I wasn't really feeling the game, although I do love the villains that came out of that, the Sith Triumvirate, which we're going to talk about later on. And then the last game in the KOTOR continuity was the Star Wars The Old Republic MMORPG, which I've pretty much been playing for 10 years. That came out in 2012. That's been evolving rapidly throughout the past decade, and I think it's one of the only Legends properties left that's still active. I don't know how. I guess it's excuse me, I guess it's such a cash cow that Disney's like, alright, even though it clashes with the lore, it's still bringing in money, so we'll let it just keep going. But whatever, I'm not complaining. I've been meaning to go back to it. I still need to complete my Smuggler and or was it Scoundrel? I can't remember. And then also my Jedi Consular arcs. But once I finish those, I would have finished all 8 core classes. And I'm probably not going to do the subscriptions to do the big Eternal Empire or anything like that. I'll think about it, but there's a whole ton more storylines in there. It's several games in one, and that's also very good. But overall, Old Republic, I love it. So that takes us back into this ranking where we start off with Darth Malik, and I'm gonna have to not be spoiler free. We're gonna have to talk about the characters, obviously. Malik is a very cool villain. Obviously, he was usurped by many other stronger villains before and after him, but he's very much a prototype, kind of foreshadowing for the villains who would be coming along later on in his timeline. He feels very Darth Vader, of course. He has the breathing apparatus. Not just a breathing apparatus, his jaw is freaking gone because of his confrontation with Revan. But Yeah, he was just a really interesting foil for Revan, who, of course, we're going to be talking about very soon. Of course, they were both brothers in Jedi Knighthood, and then they were both turned to the dark side by Vitiate, and then Revan got amnesia, and then that's kind of the whole point of KOTOR 1. It's Bastila trying to redeem Darth Revan, and you being Revan, you have the choice of reforming yourself to conform to the light, which is the first thing I did in my first playthrough, or perhaps you could turn face right back to the Sith and defeat Malak and have hopes of one day destroying the Emperor, which he does actually wind up trying to do, regardless of your decision in later continuity. But anyways, as for Malak, he's a really cool, spooky, calculating villain. I wouldn't say he's the most deep compared to the other Sith Lords that we've gotten, but he's a character who doesn't require that much depth. He's just a very cold and spooky monster, and he sells that tenfold. And also, he's just a badass Sith. Who doesn't like a badass dark side character, right? So I have no issue putting him higher than C tier. I'd put him in B. I mean, obviously, there's Sith Lords within the Old Republic era who are much superior to him, but I definitely have more connection to Malak than I do with any Fallen Order character, but I don't... Maybe I wouldn't put him as high as Jin. Hard to say. Higher than Merrin? I'd say higher than Merrin. Tarkin, Grievous... I'd say... higher than Han, maybe? Then I would mean higher than Jin. I think I would put him higher than Han, just because I really like the prospect of Malak's relationship with Revan and then how they kind of play off each other in the final act, and I think it's a really big deal for me. Han's great, of course, but I just really love Malak's insurgency within the main story and play. I just really adore that. Darth Nihilus now, and he's definitely one of my favorite Sith, maybe top 3. I do think I like him more than Malak, even though he's perhaps not as fleshed out, but basically he came around in KOTOR 2, and in Revan's effort after he was redeemed to the light, he tried creating a super weapon to fight the Sith, or was it the Mandalorians? It was one of them, and it was called the Mass Shadow Generator, and it effectively corrupted a planet. It caused a whole lot of side effects, and one of them was a wound in the Force, being Darth Nihilus, who originally I think was just a normal guy, but not even a Force user, but ultimately it turned him into the Lord of Hunger. He felt this immense craving for the Force. He would devour anyone who had any attunement to the Force itself, and it came to the point where he kept consuming and consuming, and then he wound up devouring whole planets. So he's one of the most dangerous entities you could ever encounter in the Star Wars mythos, in canon or in Legends. He takes almost every character that we're seeing on this list and hands them their ass and everyone else's ass. He's a freaking threat. He is dangerous, and he's really cool. And honestly, he's not even Sith at this point. He's an absolute monster. There's no conscience anymore. All he does is eat. Kind of like the rest of us, right? But yeah, I really love Nihilus. Actually, I'd say I'd put him over Tarkin. Would I put him in A, though, is a tough one, though. I really love Nihilus. I think he's really cool. He also has the unique Force ability, Force Drain, which allows him to basically suck the life out of anybody. And he's pretty much a Force vampire, is the best way to describe him. Yeah, you know what? I would put him in A. I will put him probably around the Darksiders we have here, Kylo and Palpatine. I think I want to put him as high as Kylo almost. Which character do I care about more? Alright, yeah, I think I'll put Nihilus between both of them. So let's work our way up. We really got to climb here, but as long as we keep track, nothing gets reshuffled, so that's fine. So, yeah, Nihilus, low A tier, I think that works for me. Now, Revan, we've talked about him already. He is the poster boy of the entire Old Republic banner. Without Revan, you have no Old Republic. It's that simple. And his story is basically Anakin Skywalker on steroids. He was a Jedi, then he became a Sith, then he became a Jedi again, then he kind of fell out of favor with the Jedi and the Sith and kind of started his own thing. Then he got really, he became really ambitious and trying to destroy the Emperor, at the time being Vitiate, and then as a result of that, he became trapped for 300 years. He finally got out. His soul split into two different Force ghosts, basically. The dark side, totally hellbent on destroying Vitiate, and by that point, Vitiate was already dead, so the dark side of Revan brought Vitiate back to life just because he was that petty, just so he could say that he destroyed him, but of course he failed. And then the light side half of Revan had to redeem the dark side, and finally both halves became one with the Force. It's a totally insane story. The ins and outs I don't even have full on. Like, it's such a confusing story, but it is great. And then you have his relationship with Malik, and more importantly, his marriage with Bastila Shan. I forgot to mute my notifications, I apologize for that. And that was the first time we ever saw a Jedi and a Sith become a couple, which I think is a totally awesome prospect. So, just by proxy of how many things Revan as a character has taught us in every iteration of him, from KOTOR to the tail end of the Old Republic multiplayer game, I actually want him in S tier. He is such an excellent character, a character who you pretty much hear nothing about in the very first KOTOR game. He's largely mute, except for when you're switching to his character and he'd say, okay, let's go, or something like that. But like, that's before you realize just how important he is. But then when you come across him as your own custom characters in the Old Republic multiplayer game, that's where you actually meet Revan in the flesh, and you really get to know him. So, now where am I going to line him up besides all these characters? I'd say just above the Mandalorian and Djarin. They both satisfy the same need that I want from not just a Star Wars character, but just from a character in terms of choosing family and faith. I'd say Mando chooses family. Like, he gives up the dark saber. He wants nothing to do with it. More than anything, he just wants Grogu to be safe. And then that's kind of his arc. As for Revan, he abandons his family completely. He even has a son who he never even meets, who we never even learn a whole ton about. That's something that would have been nice to hear more of had Disney not purchased all of Star Wars, of course. That might have been a totally different story. But, yeah, it's really just a quantity over quality thing. There's just so much Revan that I have to put him over the Mandalorian, but then again, Vader's Vader, as much as I've said that already, and Bosk has been with me since my LEGO Star Wars days, which was way back, so I can't discredit either of them. So, who do we have now? Dengar, who's my least favorite of the Bounty Hunter lineup in Empire, but he's cool, he's pretty interesting. I mean, I think one of the best things about him is his story in Legends. Pretty much the reason why he's all bandaged up is because during the prequel era, apparently he was in a swoop bike race with Han Solo, and as a result of that, he became gravely injured. He had like cybernetic implants installed into him, and he had a huge vendetta against Han Solo, like many others, so he really did want to put him down, but at the end of the day, I think he actually found a love interest, would you believe it? And he actually accompanied Han at his wedding to celebrate his marriage with Leia. So that's kind of a neat little thing, but outside of that, I never really had a whole lot of connection with him. In Clone Wars, he's kind of cool. He doesn't do a whole ton, though. It's nice to finally hear him speak there, so that's pretty interesting, but he kind of just floats around. I definitely prefer Forlom and Zuckuss, who sadly are not even here, but yeah, he's cool. Who the hell is talking to me right now? But I'll look at that later. I'll give him C. He's fine. I mean, I definitely prefer him over everyone in D tier solely on the fact that he is a bounty hunter, one of the first that we ever see. I'll put him with Bib, below Bib. It's cool by me. Dexter Jetster, I never reminded the character. He's pretty cool. I think that's how he appeared in Clone Wars. He showed up there briefly. He's most important for showing up in Attack of the Clones. He kind of tips Obi-Wan off to finding the source of that saber dart that was shot by Jango Fett, and then that's how we kind of start learning about the clones. So that's kind of cool, but aside from being just a whistleblower, there's not a whole lot to him. Didn't mind the CGI. I thought his character design was pretty cool. He was neat. He was just fine. So I'd give him... I guess I put him above Dengar, just on the fact that he was also just a visual stand-in kind of a character, but he was a little bit more important to the plot. But then again, Bib Fortuna is Dewana Wonga. I know that's kind of just my my ex machina for him, but there's something about him. I love Bib Fortuna. He's pretty damn great. PODguy the Lesser. I love that name, Lesser. And if I have my lore right, the reason why he's called the Lesser, even though he, aside from the Geonosian Queen, he's a leader of all Geonosians, is because the Geonosians have a very strict caste system, and he comes from one of the lowest levels of Geonosian you could come from, but he rose all the way to the top, so that's very respectable. But outside of that, he's kind of just there. He talks pretty cool. I like his language. I think that's pretty neat. But it's definitely a character where I could feel like I could see a lot more potential in him. More so than Newt Gunray, perhaps. So you know what? I'll put them right beside each other. I think I prefer PODguy. I would like to learn more about him. I also find it amusing that his name sounds like a game that you'd play on like a family Friday game night or something like that. Who's up for a round of PODguy? But anyways, moving on. Quinlan Vos. He's a very huge fan favorite. He's like right on the fence between Dark Jedi and just normal Jedi. Very unconventional methods. I think he also had a thing with the Saz Ventress, which is kind of cool, but personally, I never cared about him. He showed up in 1 or 2 episodes of Clone Wars, but for me, it was kind of just a whole lot of bravado. He just kept slipping up. He didn't really bother me, but I was kind of just, alright, whatever. He's trying to do his own thing, go against the grain, whatever, but I never really had any ties with him, but he's fine. I guess he shows us a little bit of something. I'll put him below even Peel. I think that's fine for me. Then we have another part of the CIS being, now that we've already talked about Newt Gunray and PODguy the Lesser, now we have, why am I blanking on his name? He's my favorite. He's a Techno-Union guy. Why am I losing his name? And he's my favorite of them. Crap. Alright. Time to do another search. There's so many characters. Like, you gotta forgive me, right? You understand? There's so many characters. They're so easy to forget. So let's see. Union guy. Like, literally, that's one. Wat Tambor. There we are. It's such a fun name. And just a really fun little moment with him. I think we do get a lot more from him in the Star Wars Clone Wars show, which is really refreshing. So, but I really love his character design. More so than these two here. So I'd say, you know, I'll actually put him up to C tier. Put him above, I say actually maybe, alright, between Dexter and Bib. That works for me, fine. Then we have Wedge Antilles. Very cool character, shows up in a lot more movies than you'd ever expect. But he doesn't really add a whole ton. I know he's a fan favorite, but for me he's kind of just there. But I would never give him F tier. I wouldn't even give him D tier. That's just not fair. But he serves his role. He's, you know, a bona fide Rebels veteran, so gotta give him credit. But for me, he served less purpose than Val did, so that's fine by me. I know there's a lot more Legends lore to him, but I don't know it, therefore I can't speak for it. So that just wouldn't be fair for me to just fake that out. Then we have Fennec Shand, who is very cool. I like that she's played by Ming-Na Wen. Again, it's pretty cool to see another Asian actress put into the Star Wars fold. Just for me, it's kind of a neat little plus. But we don't get a whole ton from her. She's Boba Fett's grunt, effectively. She plays a part very well. It's just we don't really know a whole ton about her. She's kind of just being a badass, killing people who arguably Boba Fett should have killed, like that Ithorian who ran the spice trade and all that. So Well, it wasn't even him running the spice trade, it was the Pikes, but he was he kind of stabbed Boba in the back to protect his own people, or just get the money, I don't know. But, yeah, Fennec's cool, but I definitely wanted more from her, so I'd put her in D tier. I think Zori was more enticing to me. I thought she was a little bit more interesting, but I definitely prefer Fennec over Poe, so I'll drop her there. Frog Lady, throwaway character. Like the character design, thought she was fun. I feel like the arc that she had definitely took away from season 2. That was a big issue for Mando season 2, as I've discussed. It was way too linear. It was just like video game quests, pretty much. So I like her design. I don't think she's important enough to be in C tier, but and I'm not enticed by her at all, but I'm not bothered by her either. She's kind of just there to be there, so I'll drop her in low D tier.